Okay, welcome to the October 10th, 2024 Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Welcome to those joining us in person and virtually. Simple preamble. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 100.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the city planning department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendees will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions, activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. Finish speaking, please lower your raised hand. Lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting. Dan.
All right, to go over the meeting rules and procedures, the chair will call each agenda item and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comment received. The deadline for public comment is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item at which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberation and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
All right. Yeah. Right. So we'll call the October 10th, 2024 Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Dan, please call the roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Dreyer? Mr. Dulick? Councilmember Gray?
Here.
Director Wong? Mr. Lozier?
Here.
Mr. Sandberg?
Here.
Mr. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Trasick?
Here.
Dr. Williams?
Here.
And Ms. Trout. All right, Mr. Chairman, we do have quorum. I'd also like to note that we also have Carl Brunges, Jessica Beam, and myself from the Landmarks office present. And we still have no one from law at this point.
All right. Very good. We'll start with certificates of appropriateness. Case number 24-083, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, 1191 MLK Junior Drive, Syrian Cultural Garden Restoration. Would be applicant. Applicant, please identify yourself and start with your presentation.
Yes. My name is Wahid Khoury. I acknowledge its profession and I'm the president of the Syrian Cultural Garden. Thank you for your time and thank you for accommodating the first slot. So just to go over the project, I submitted this information to introduce the issue. Just to show you the centerpiece that we have at the Syrian Cultural Garden. And this was installed and dedicated in 2011. And it went through the committees and the whole thing. And this is very special presentation in the garden and in the whole cultural gardens area due to its prominence, from the street, from Martin Luther King and so on. It's supposed to replicate the Arch of Triumph in Palmyra in the center of Syria, in the middle of Syria, which is a Roman outpost city that was very prosperous and had civilization around about close to 2,000 years ago. And unfortunately, the original arch in Palmyra was blasted by ISIS in 2015. So we have a special pride that we have it in Cleveland now, and we want to keep it up. So this is the picture of the total structure of the arch, and around April, late April of this year, we noticed a crack in the central part of the arch. As you can see, the crack here, and it seems to be through on the other side, on the back of the arch. Here's was a little darker, but you see the crack. And there was a crack on the surface also of the arch. So this structure was made of sandstone at the time, and obviously now in retrospect we see that it didn't stand the tough weather in Cleveland. So it showed this crack. We engaged several professionals, including engineer. I hope he's joining the meeting, Mr. James Kramer, and the concrete company, Pompili Concrete, which is a prominent manufacturer of concrete in the city. And after a lot of investigation with other people also, it appeared the best option. The standing structure is very intact and very dependable, very reliable. The columns. So the plan was settled to change the central arch and what we call the two shoulders on the side, as delineated by the arrows that you see. And these are the ornamented parts of that structure. Just a little close up. So this is the one on the right side, on our right side here. You can see, the detailed engraving of the stone and where the replacement will be. So there is that line exactly at the tip of the arrow, and above that. So we're calling this shoulder, the straight one, then the central piece. And this is on the left side, same thing. We also had several pavers on these stairs. There's a little theater, we're calling it theater. It's a 3 steps. Replicate also a massive theater in Palmyra. We only use 3 steps, obviously. There's some wear and tear in a few papers, so we plan to change them also to create structure. So we enlisted the services of Mr. James Kramer, Kramer Engineering, and he will have in terms of our choices of the material. It's going to be heavy concrete, cast concrete with the quartz reinforcement, and it will try to match the exact color of the rest of the structure, which is sandy color. And it will be a little granular than very smooth concrete. and being with those ornamentation, decoration, will give it three-dimensional, view, and that will lessen the impact of being concrete and this sandstone. So it will be closely matching the existing structure. Is Mr. Kramer on?
Yes.
Thank you, Jim, for joining.
Oh, the speaker's right there.
Thank you, Jim, for joining. We appreciate it. If you want to say a few words about your illustration of your.
Sure, yes, we can.
Oh.
So I was hired to do the reinforcing drawings, reinforced concrete drawings to replace the cracked arch, and Pompili precasters were hired to do the shop drawings and the forming to pour the precast concrete. Basically, we were going to replace the arch in an identical manner, same dimensions, same depth, shape, height, and all we had to do was spec out the concrete and the rebar. It's a lightly loaded arch. It's really only self-supporting its own weight and maybe a little bit of wind, but there's no real load on this arch. So relatively speaking, it's very light. There's no load on it. We're using epoxy coated rebar, so it will last a long time, and the rebar won't corrode under normal conditions. Pompili Precast, they're responsible for getting all the texture and all the details and intricacies correct with the ornate elements of it. But as far as Kramer Engineering, we're responsible for the concrete and rebar, and those are the drawings that we provided Doctor with.
Thank you, Jim. These are more details. And I think we have Brandon from Pompili Concrete. Brandon, are you online?
I am online, yeah.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone, I'm Brandon. I'm with Pompili Precast. Just a quick preface, we've done a ton of work at the Cultural Gardens, most recently the Centennial Peace Plaza. So we have some work around. But I guess in short, our plan of attack for this is to obviously follow James Kramer's recommendations on the steel structure that we're going to pour the concrete around. In addition, he mentioned the intricate detail, the palm fronds and such. We're actually going to do some selective demolition to carefully keep the current pieces intact. We're going to use rubber to basically make a casting of the details so that we can replicate the exact texture and palm detail that currently exists. In addition, we'll be submitting samples to match the color. So essentially what we're responsible for is creating an exact replica that I would say is better. We use chemicals in our mixes to basically prevent water absorption and things of this nature. So we'll have an arch that stands the test of time.
All right, thank you for that.
Thank you, Brandon.
Before we move on, Brandon, can we just get your last name for the record, please?
It's Grasela, Grasela.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes, I think, yes.
Okay, we'll move on to Design Review Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was reviewed by the Design and Preservation Committee of the Cleveland Cultural Gardens Federation that recommended approval, and the Cleveland Cultural Gardens Executive Board on their September 30th meeting unanimously approved plans for its restoration and repair project for the Arch of Palmyra Monument.
All right, thank you. And staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff is happy to see that this restoration is happening. It is unfortunate that this amount of deterioration has happened to the sandstone in such a short period of time. Since the sandstone has failed, the reinforced concrete appears to be an appropriate replacement, so long as the detail and the colors are matched as was indicated it would in the presentation. We are noting that there were two column sections that appeared to be a different color, and we were wondering if those had been replaced, but looking back at the Google Street Views, it seems that those have been a different color the entire time and were not replaced, and it's all original otherwise. So we would recommend issuance of the certificate of appropriateness.
All right.
Just to follow up the comment about these two pieces on the site. When we got the stones, they were not perfect in size and dimensions. So we rushed, we had all the construction teams working, and we rushed to Pompili and they did those in concrete. I believe, when we discussed with the engineer and the contractor, there's a possibility of staining them a little darker to match the sand color of the rest of the structure.
All right. Thank you. With that, I'll open it up for commission members' questions and comments. All right. I just have a few questions from the presentation and where the arrow indicated. It seemed like just the capital, I would say, of that horizontal shoulder was being replaced. Where's the actual joint of the replacement concrete?
There is a little darker part, and then below it is a little lighter part. So it's at the bottom of the
line. So the capitals to the columns.
Yes.
All right. And is there a joint there presently? How is the joint going to be created?
I don't know. We have to ask Brandon and
Yeah. So that question is for the structural engineer and Pompili.
Yeah, I can handle that one. So we're going to use pins. Basically, we'll cast threaded inserts into the bottoms of the new shoulders that we make. And in these threaded inserts will go stainless steel threaded rod. They will match up with holes that are to be drilled in the top of the existing structure. And then in addition to that, the contractor will use either epoxy or like a color matched grout to set the new shoulders on.
And so my first question is there a joint there presently? And if not, how will that joint be created?
There is a joint there presently. I do believe it's just epoxy. So there's probably an eighth inch epoxy bed in between the bottom of the shoulder and the top of the existing structure. We plan to replicate that. We're just adding stainless steel dowels for additional support.
Okay. And what's your process for creating samples to match the color of the existing sandstone?
We have probably close to 75 different colors. So typically my process is I'll take a handful out to the site. I'll pick one that best matches, and from there I can tweak it. I can add different colors and pigments such that it matches the existing perfectly.
And can you identify the installing contractor and your experience working with them?
Yeah, sure. So the contractor is Grunwell Cachero. We've been doing work with them for probably 8 to 10 years. They've done numerous jobs in Cleveland, and I believe they've done some work in the cultural gardens. Most recently, we did a project with them in the Eaton Chagrin Boulevard Shopping Center. Actually very similar in nature. We were tasked with matching the color of the existing stone on the building facade. And it's actually quite challenging to tell the difference of the replaced panels with the existing. So I would say that's a great example of basically what we're going to do again for this project.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
That concludes my questions. Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that, your community is, moving forward with the prevention and maintenance, of this, this arch. I'm concerned about the materials. I'm not totally comfortable with introducing the concrete to this, the sandstone arch. I have a question regarding the shoulder area. I'm wondering why that is being replaced. The
When-
horizontal.
Okay, we'll see what they answer also, but when we met a couple times there on site, and, you know, they used the ladder, and, you know, they were very thorough about the inspection. They felt that if we just do the arch, the central arch, it's going to be mismatch, you know, not a continuity of the ornamentation part. No matter how careful they are to replicate it, it's going to be different from the rest. So since there's a homogeneous appearance of the shoulders and the arch, then they're going to do both. Also, having it at the joint, if you go back to the picture, where the central arch meets the shoulders, it will be much better to do it brand new connection. That's my impression. Can go back.
Yeah, it's just like.
one screen.
Okay.
Has, I know in the materials that we received on this, you have talked to contractors and engineers regarding this, but I was wondering if there were any other exploration done to see if there's a way to preserve or repair or, you know, maintain the sandstone in some way. The sandstone does crack. I mean, that's, you know, part of what happens over time. And that we see that in other structures. So I'm just wondering if you had explored that.
I mean, I'll wait to hear from them also, but just say the same, that they want it to be homogeneous. You know, the new structure with the old structure.
Okay, I'm talking about in general, though, if there was any, you know, discussion or any experts brought in that could give you ideas on how to maintain and preserve the existing sandstone that's there.
The existing sandstone, Brandon, you remember when Frank Caspio came from Grunwell? And he's the contractor. This is a restoration company. And they really focused about the joints, you know, what to do with the joints, what the best way. That's what they felt, that we need to change both the shoulders and the central arch. And stabilize them better. Also, once we're done with this, he's going to go over all the joints, everything from the column, you know, the standing column joints, do some cleaning, power washing, and then sealing. So that's included in the final product. And he gave us an estimate actually for this. Brandon, you want to add anything? You have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I remember from a site visit, again, the gentleman's name that represents the contractor, whose name's Frank. I remember him suggesting that the arch be replaced because the crack was all the way through the arch. Again, not my area of expertise, but I do recall him specifying that.
Okay, so basically you had this contractor come through and he recommended replacement, and that was all.
Yes, and the engineer, I think.
I think that those are my questions.
Thank you.
Someone on has their hand up, need to follow up with no last name.
Hello, good morning. This is Paul Burek from the Cleveland Cultural Garden Federation. I'm on a board and I'm chair of the Design and Preservation. We did have a discussion, a brief discussion about that, and I think it's important to recognize that we're in a somewhat different environment than the original arch. We are going through a freeze-thaw cycle here frequently, and the arch and the shoulders act as a cap. And in this case, since it was sandstone, which is somewhat permeable, it was subject to expansion and cracks. And the thought was with the concrete forming a uniform capping of the sandstone structure below would act as the deterrent for water to penetrate the rest of the structure. So that was part of the reasoning on our end.
All right, thank you for that. So will the arch be cast in one piece?
Yeah, that was another note from the contractor. Currently, I believe it's 3 pieces. The arch is going to be cast in one piece for the new one.
Okay, so the arch itself is one piece, no joints.
Correct.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has there been a maintenance program for this arch, and will there be a maintenance program for it in the future?
Yes, we used to seed it every couple of years with commercial seeder. Obviously, it wasn't solid proof, for the roof. And when we talked to Frank, the contractor, we're planning to have annual program, maybe power washing and seeding. There are a lot of high trees very close to the arch. If you see the dark spots, it's often the trees around.
I'm not entirely comfortable with this. I do think maintaining the sandstone should have been explored a little more. It seems to me that, it's like, that's cracked, we're gonna need to put the concrete up. I think the natural material is preferable and it's more in keeping with the cultural garden. And again, sandstone is a pretty common material in this area. It's a lot of it is local. I'm just not totally comfortable with replacing it with the concrete at this point.
We panicked about taking that step, but it sounded like the more durable step on the long run. We don't want to take chances with other kind of sense.
Well, I don't want people endangered by it or anything like that. I agree with you there. I just, I just feel like there should have been more exploration with, people in the stone industry to determine if there was any way to secure this and maintain the stone.
Maybe, sandstones are commonly used at the entrances of homes, for instance,
Sandstones all over the place. There's monuments made out of sandstones.
The problem is the arch exposure, from all directions, not physical support, say like lay on the floor. So we're just hoping this will give us more durability.
All right, I'll ask a question then of the structural engineer. I'm not sure if you were commissioned just to design the replacement arch, or were you asked to investigate the viability of a repair method for the existing sandstone?
Yes, I was hired to do the inspection and preliminary consulting And the primary reason for on my end, deciding factor was that precast concrete with epoxy coated rebar will be far more durable and much stronger than just sandstone. So that was the deciding factor for me because when you include the epoxy coated rebar, it would easily make it 10 times stronger than just sandstone, which is very weak in tension. So that was the deciding factor for me.
All right. I think that's very helpful. Thank you very much. All right. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one clarifying question. When was this first constructed?
2011. The dedication was so a year before, 6 months before.
Gotcha. Yeah, so there's been a substantial damage since, over a 12, 13-year period. So understood why you're considering something a little bit different here. That was my only.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Always my go-to guy.
To approve as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Chair, I'll second the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wave. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Dan, please call the roll.
Ms. Anderson,
No,
Councilmember Gray, Councilmember Gray,
Can I just, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
would you like to abstain?
Yes, abstain. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Excuse me. Now, Mr. Chairman, the motion passes by a vote of 5-1 with 1 abstention.
Okay. Thank you again. Good luck on the project. That's it.
Thank you. I made copies of the PowerPoint.
You can have the record. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
That remarkably is the end of certificates of appropriation for this meeting. And so we'll move on to concept schematic plans. First case is 24081, Ohio City Historic District, 1768 Fulton Road, new construction. Would the applicant please introduce yourself and tell us about your project? Can you tell us?
Harold, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Harold Smith. I'm with Contextual Design Firm. We are presenting a duplex home in Ohio City at 1768 Fulton Drive. We are utilizing I think there was a previously built home here that's been demolished. I'm not sure of the time it's demolished. And we're utilizing the open area lot to construct a 2-family duplex. When going through this process, the first stage that we did is kind of start looking at the context of the neighborhood and seeing what would be a new construction build, but still fitting within the setting of Fulton. One of the first things that stood out to us was our neighboring home that has a very strong gable stage home. We then started kind of just looking across the area, looking at the textures, the colors, the materiality used on the street. Adjacent to the other side, we have a full brick home. If you look, sorry, if we go to our next slide. Our next slide, sorry, can I don't know if I can. Thank you. And one of the things I also really noticed, the area has such a different, diverse style of buildings. Nothing's kind of, one standard approach. Very industrial. Some of them are fairly commercial, industrial, residential, and storefront industrial. And so we're trying to figure out how do we best fit this home inside this lot. And if you go to our first, I think, iteration, I think is one more page past. That's our site plan. One more page, I'll get to the site plan back. Oops, sorry. Forward. Yep, right here. Our elevation, we kind of start developing it in a way we thought a gable would be most fitting. The gable fits in that we believe it mirrors a really nice pattern for the adjacent property. It sits in a nestled area to where I don't think it kind of stands off too much to where it kind of juts in contrast of the overall neighborhood. We started utilizing materials that we saw and we could present itself for the area, hardy vertical siding, a brick pattern at the base, another vertical pattern at the front, at the adjacent base. And we thought this would be really reflective of the area, but yet still kind of bring a new modern space to it. If we go to our site plan, as we developed our site, we were really thinking about kind of how to flow through the site. There's a house in the rear that we need to maintain, and I believe that our developers are going to renovate as is. And we wanted to see how we could share open space with the individuals who will be housing it. So we came up with an idea of a rooftop garden, which would not only give a little additional open space, but also break up that ridge, that higher ridge on the space to kind of give some deviation for the overall ridge line. So we also left off the porch because we wanted to give more green space for the neighborhood, that area, because we didn't have a large backyard. And we thought that might be a really nice, though contrasting, a nice add to the property itself. We have a few perspective I can show you in the back. Two more. Yep. And one more. So here I think it was a nice perspective of kind of seeing our street view, seeing how it fits within between the neighborhood, which we thought was kind of, again, appropriately fitting. We did have some high windows. Our high windows, a lot of it came from when we were looking down our street. A lot of this rhythm kind of repeated itself, and we thought it could be a good accent in here and a bit of a modern touch that we thought would be fitting. So overall, that's our design, and we're looking forward to hearing comments from the landmark.
Okay, thank you very much. Did this go to design review?
It did, Mr. Chairman. It was seen by the Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee as a schematic design at their October 3rd, 2024 meeting. They were, largely receptive to the idea, thought it struck a nice balance, contextually, clearly new construction. They liked the verticality, the angle of the gable. They felt that the windows on the front could use some work. They'd like to see some sort of porch element, or at least a patio, something sort of more, public facing, welcoming, and thought that the first floor could use some windows to break it up and make it a little less imposing feeling. But generally they had a favorable impression of it, I would say.
All right, thank you. And staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Initially to note, this project will require variances. It's in a two-family district, and it's proposing to build a duplex on the lot already with one house, and so that's a variance it'll need. Also, the lot area, which is a typical variance needed in the Ohio City neighborhood of just how much space you can build on a lot. There is no variance needed for the off-street parking provided because it is in a TOD zone, but the site plan does show possibly a parking spot near the rear house, so more information is gonna be needed because you can't put a parking spot near windows on the first floor. But overall, staff is in agreement with a lot of the local, comments on the house. The building on site appears to actually match in, the original house that was there, which has a similar kind of pointed gable as the neighboring kind of Gothic revival house. And it's what's being proposed appears to be like more of a modern interpretation of that style. And so we are, as noted, in agreement with a lot of the local committee. We have some concerns with the fenestration and wonder if there's possible opportunities for the third floor or like an attic window or something to kind of break up that large mass for that gable. And also question the access for the roof deck as well as where gutters and downspouts are gonna be. And so as they move on to final, we look forward to seeing those details kind of fleshed out.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll open it up for comments and questions from the commission. Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I understand, the replicating the forms in the community, the gable, but I think otherwise this is not compatible with the existing built environment. I think it's an abstraction of the some of the properties that we see in the area, but it is simply an abstraction, and it is not incorporating other elements, which is something that I think people like seeing in these historic areas. Some of the symmetry, some of the more detailed elements. I feel that this is, would be fine in other neighborhoods, but I think as far as the historic district, it's missing the complexity and the intricacy and the and the general symmetry that I think is necessary. So I cannot support this, and I think it's pretty far from something that I could support.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Anyone else? I would comment that I agree with the design review committee comment that the first floor masonry area needs some work. I guess we could go to the floor plan and see programmatically what's planned for that space.
Yeah. We're currently looking at a staircase that allows us to bring light into the overall house. And when we talked to the plan review, we actually agreed bringing fenestration at that first level would actually be beneficial. And I believe that we can add to that. We in-house, we were told not to make any adjustments for this meeting. So in-house, we have made some adjustments that we were looking at bringing towards at the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree with those comments that the fenestration at that level, breaking up that would be beneficial. And what is the setback from the street, and would that setback accommodate some type of a porch structure in the front?
Yeah, we have a 10-foot setback. We are actually our face of the building is at this face, complementary to the neighboring homes. So we do have room for the porch. And yeah, we do have room for a porch, and I think we have a couple ideas that we will present to that.
So personally, I would like to see that developed. I think that would certainly enhance the the appearance of the front of the structure.
Okay.
Mr. Lotion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tend to agree with local design review committee. I think personally that the massing and the overall form, I think blends with the historic, with the existing context. I think it is certainly a more modern interpretation of, let's say, the house that's on the house to the north. I don't necessarily mind the more modern interpretation. I think though that from a materiality standpoint, maybe look at potentially simplifying that a little bit more as well. Maybe instead of, all that brick and all the sort of, treated pine, maybe that goes to a more, a different material. I think the brick, and you mentioned too that the, looking at fenestration and re-looking at the fenestration on the front elevation, I think also makes sense, and I'm looking forward to seeing further development there. But the sort of the brick base feels a little bit
Abby?
too fortified, let's say, especially without any windows. I mean, overall, I think I appreciate the thoroughness of this design presentation. I think this elevation that we're looking at here, I don't see, I think that I don't see any issues with this, how you're breaking up the two units, and having the central, roof deck. It would be beneficial to see that third floor plan in the next iteration, just so that we can understand how that roof deck is accessed. So I think overall, I think those are my comments.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Anything online?
I guess I'll make one more
Okay.
comment. Of the more modern interpretations of projects that have been developed in the Ohio State neighborhood, I think this is one of the better iterations. Fortunately or unfortunately. I think there is precedent, throughout the neighborhood for more modern interpretations, but I do think that further study of specifically the front elevation, I think would help it maybe fit in a little bit better with the context immediate to this property.
Just simply put, simplification of the materials,
Okay.
I think would be helpful.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'm oppositional here. This design is somewhat oppositional. I think we have put in many more abstracted designs that are taken from the historic fabric, and I think that if we continue down this route, we're going to degrade the overall look of the historic district by continuing to create more modern infill structures. I think, we are in an area where there's like a postmodern, something that is acceptable and something that we probably should look at more in these new construction projects. So I really am concerned that we're going down a path that is going to lead to just a different look, a non-historic look. And you tend to embrace, as long as the massing and the scale is in keeping, we tend to roll with it. But I think as we continue down this, we're gonna we're just going to make it less consistent, less kind, just. I just don't think we should keep going with these modern structures. Feel pretty strongly about it. I think it should, but my inability to articulate this. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms.
As
Henderson.
ruptured as they are.
All right. Anyone else?
Sure.
Mr. Shanker?
I think I tend to lean more on Ms. Anderson's opinion. I think this is even a little more, I think the location of this particular site is a little more important, that it's the intersection of East 30th onto Fulton. And so anybody coming to West 30th, anybody coming north on West 30th will face this full frontally. I think that particular site will get more views than a site that is just within a street you pass perpendicular to it, and it's just another building that you pass by. So I think the focus of this particular site is a little bit heavier, and so I would prefer this to look a bit more traditional for this neighborhood and not so modern. I appreciate the massing and the form, but I think it's already been said that it would benefit from the porch, it would benefit from on the first floor, it would benefit from some symmetry. The windows up above don't need to be as modern looking either. I like the form, and that's just because that's kind of the only part you copied from the neighborhood. Everything else is a modern twist on the form. So I personally think this would benefit from blending in a little bit better with the neighborhood. That's a pretty general statement, but yeah, that's my personal opinion.
Okay. Any further comments? Does the applicant feel like you've received sufficient input to help guide you in the further development of this project?
I do, yes.
Okay, great. So we very much look forward to seeing the next iteration based on comments received.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a concept plan, so no vote will be taken. Again, we look forward to seeing your project come back in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Case number 24082, Gordon Square Historic District, 1401. Correction on the agenda, 1401 West 75th Street, rooftop addition. With the applicant, please identify yourself and tell us why you're present.
Good morning, Stacey Burnett and Gary Burnett.
Oh yeah, there's a delay on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the one that's a little better.
Okay. Okay, great, thanks.
We don't make it easy.
Right. Okay, so my husband and I acquired this property about 10 years ago. It was one of the first artist lots that was renovated and rehabbed. The old City Savings and Loan and Public Library building in 1994 into 95. And back in the day, the artist loft, it was really cool to have a glass solarium, which at that time it had a functioning HVAC system that heated it and cooled it. And it now currently is leaking. We've spent thousands of dollars, more recently $10,000 to try to alleviate the leaks, caulking, removing. The windows have since been compromised. So, we just recently moved into it because it was a rental, and since we moved into it, we're experiencing more and more of the leaks. And every time it rains or serious rains during the tornadoes, we take on water. And it is coming into our condo, which is damaging our condo, which is a bigger expense. And currently, because the structure has failed and the glass has failed, it is a hot box. So if it's 60 degrees, it's 160 degrees, not exaggerating. And then last night, it got into the 40s because we have an open stairwell into the solarium. So, you know, heat rises and cooling drops. So then it affects the functioning of our HVAC inside of our condo, which we don't use the HVAC outside in the solarium because it's just not efficient. So it affects our heating and cooling bills. It affects the damage in our condo because of the leaks and we can't stop. So after many visits on the top contractors, triage, trying to identify the leaks, trying to stop the leaks, it's been determined that the glass solarium needs to be removed and taken down. And with that being said, we want to utilize the same footprint of the glass solarium because then otherwise we would just have a hole in our condo in our roof. So we have been working with Larson Architects and JP Toczek. Unfortunately, he can't be here because he's learning new things to try to help guide us through this process. So the first two slides you can see, we are on the corner of West 75th and Detroit. And if you're looking east, where 75th and Detroit and Lake split. So the first picture you can see above is the current structure of the glass box that we call the solarium. And then the second one to the right is the proposal that was done by Larson Architects. Now, if you were driving east on Detroit or Lake, this is the view that you can see the solarium and then the proposed structure. If you're driving west on Detroit, you cannot see the structure. If you're facing south on the north side of Detroit, you cannot see the structure. Okay, so this is the footprint. It's about 208 square feet. And this is the footprint that we want to utilize to take down the solarium and put up the new structure. So this will give you an idea of the footprint inside and the stairwell where the hole would be if we didn't have the solarium. So these are the renderings. The first one on the left, the pitch of the roof is such because we have a flat roof, and the flat roof, the drainage drains south. So if you're looking at the roof, the pitch at the top is the north side. So the first one is if you're looking facing east, so that would be the west windows. And again, the roof pitching north. And then the other view on the right is the same with the front windows. And then the one on the lower left would be if you're looking west from the east side with a sliding glass door and the two windows. And then the back windows would be the south side. And then again, the view on the right where the slider is. We have worked with JP on, you know, different ideas and siding and windows and roof. And the next slide will show the materials. We would like to use a metal clad roof, ribbed. You know, of course, we want to insulate and have it as usable square footage. And then the smart side siding, which is on an OSB board, not a hardy board. You know, we went through several different materials to try to determine what would be the most durable. You know, we are on the lake, we're on a rooftop, you know, the inclement weather, you know, hot and cold. And then we met with Cleveland Lumber regarding windows. We got quotes from Pella, we got quotes from Cleveland Lumber, and determined that a casement window, which is a double wrapped casement awning, because if you're on the lake and you're on the rooftop, and we especially get hit with the west winds coming in, and the tornadoes wreaked havoc on us, the casement windows are such that it's almost like the wind pushes them, close. The double hung would be good. I like double hung, but the casement is just a more viable option, for that space. We don't have renderings, but if for sure you guys are familiar with the Watterson Lake Cleveland project and development, which is next door to us. So the Watterson Lake School was decommissioned, and when it was decommissioned, they went forward with the proposal for that development, which is supposed to, hopefully break ground in 2025. If you go back and look at those renderings, I'll go back to the. If you look at the renderings of the proposal of the project, they have very similar, they have the vertical siding. And I don't know if you guys reviewed, there was a house on West 65th, maybe 1356, I can't remember the address, that used this smart siding with the batten. I have a picture of it, but I mean, it looks great. But with that being said, this architect is very similar to the new development that is going in the Watterson Lake. So what we're proposing, because it's going to rain Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and soon it will be snowing, we would like to be able to go forward and take down the glass box, put up this structure and be able to utilize this space. And again, it damages our unit, heating, cooling, the costs. And we would hopefully like to do it in 2024, if at all possible, before it starts snowing.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Did this project go to design review?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This was reviewed by the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Advisory Committee on October 2nd. They spoke a lot about the proposed materials and kind of looking to have that match the existing palette on the building. Currently, the greenhouse is, if you are driving past it, you either notice it or you've never seen it before in your life, even though you're driving past it. And so they talked a lot about making sure that the new addition is just as kind of part of the building and not as obvious as, something would be. And so possibly paring it down or simplifying it a little bit to make it continue to be a background feature, but, obviously new.
All right. Thank you. And the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff is certainly not opposed to replacing the existing structure. I mean, it's an obvious sort of later addition to the building as a whole. We just think it would be helpful to have some more information about the existing conditions, like site plan and proposed site plan of the roof itself to see where this fits and how much space it's taking up, full height of the building, including the new addition compared to the old one. Those sorts of details that they'll need as you move forward. So it's kind of early enough on in the process that we don't really have an opinion either way. We were curious about, looks like there's access to the rest of the roof from this building. Are there railings or anything like that? Is there a patio out there?
There used to be. There used to be, but it was taken down.
Okay.
It's not, you're not putting a patio back off of those sliding.
We would like to eventually, but again, this is priority, right?
Yeah. I guess we just want to.
But yeah, so there was a
information
door.
about what we'll see from the street level.
You actually side of it
Okay.
at all. Yeah. But there was a door that led to a deck that was a 10x10 in the legal description of when we bought it. That was included, but it was taken down and it was probably 4 feet? 4 feet, the railing was 4 feet, yeah. For safety reasons, of course.
Yes, that was.
Yeah.
What is the height of the existing parapet?
I don't have that. Maybe 12 feet, 13 feet.
Parapet is down now.
Oh, the solarium, the current solarium.
Parapet around the roof.
Yeah, but the area there is white
Yeah.
shaded in
4 feet or 3 feet.
So what's your intent of putting the sliding doors in?
Eventually to have access to what we had in the legal description was a rooftop.
And then you would add appropriate handrails
Yes.
around that.
Yes, absolutely.
So as you sort of finalize your plans, showing us on the site plan of the whole roof, showing us where that's located, just so we have a gauge
Oh,
of how
okay.
far away, people will be from the edge of the roof.
Oh, okay, got it, got it.
And information regarding existing conditions, the height of the solarium
Okay.
versus the
The new height,
Yeah. of the
Okay.
new roof.
Okay.
Right, so we can see
got it,
how much more or less it projects.
okay. Great.
Any other comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's nice to see some investment being put into this building. It's a great building. It's kind of neglected. There's been a lot of rental. It's nice to see owner occupants coming back to this building, because I remember when it was originally developed, it was pretty cutting edge. It was kind of designed as artist lofts, very cool spaces. So this is really encouraging. I'm fine with the vertical siding, that our business, we call them the dog houses up there. It's really not very obtrusive. You really don't notice it from the street. The building's really attractive, so you kind of see the building, and it's, as long as what you're putting there is similar in height and footprint to what's already there, makes sense to me. My one comment regarding the casements is, I understand what you're saying with the wind and all that, but if you have them open and it rains, if there's any kind of wind, water gets in there, right? Where it's just less likely to the double ones, right? Or other types of windows, but I just wanted to, make you aware.
Yeah, that's what Cleveland Lumber told us already. The minute you hear rain, close them. But I do like, I'm with you, Michelle, I do like double pump, but just for functionality.
Yeah.
So we couldn't open them. The proposal on the top ones are awning like copper windows.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably would make more sense as far as our wet weather. But yeah, overall, I'm really happy to see
Thank you,
this.
thank you.
Further comments, Mr. Silver?
I think I'm one of the people that see this all the time when I see it. I still live in the neighborhood and walk my dog there. So I definitely wondered what it looks like from the inside and how the view you get from it. So I think it's a really cool feature of this building. I'm in full support of the design as it is now. I do think that we would benefit from a little more of the details and the roof plan, a full roof plan, some of the heights, dimensions, stuff like that. And then I think counter to what I've said on previous presentations, have you considered solar on top of this?
Oh my gosh, no. I didn't even think of that.
That might be a good option and a good location for it in this neighborhood. Just a thought. But yeah, I mean, full support of the design.
Thank you.
Great design.
Yes. Thanks, JP.
Have you discussed with your architect the colors?
Yes, we did. Yes, we
Oh, I
did.
see desert stone.
Yeah, so, we, in hindsight, this is our first time, doing something like this. We have pictures of the colors. So Michelle, you're familiar with the building. So, because of the different textures, we looked at this one and we have different swatches, but we wanted to use the texture of the smart side siding instead of the smooth. And also Cleveland Lumber recommended the texture because of the durability, and then also when they transport, and it shows like every little nick and blemish. But this one, because the building, I don't know if you guys remember, the state trooper ran somebody into the side of our building in our column in July of 2018, and MRM had to redo it. So it's had a lot of changes, similar to the Syrian cultural, right? So it's had a lot of changes in the sandstone And MRM, Michelle used a different, I don't know even what it was because, it was a rental at that time. Of course, we were, vetted and invested in it. But there's just so many different colors and textures. And where the public library is, the column is smooth, the sandstone is smooth, the exterior is brick, but it's a different color brick. So when Larson, when we did this, we ended up with this one, but we definitely would entertain different colors, but just going with everything in the neighborhood. Ready Set has rooftop and their exterior doors have the lighter color. The laundromat, what is it, Michelle Armstrong on West 76, right? Yeah. Has that rooftop where it looks like, teeth and it has the lighter color. So that's why we ended up with this one. But for the future, we could definitely show pictures. Oh yeah, we have a sample.
Yeah, we looked at a number of different, do we want to match the brick? Do we want to contrast just lightly? And we just kind of decided on this. We thought it would weather best, it would, help to blend in, but, contrast, it kind of matches the pillars at the bottom of the building. So you see it up high and
Thanks.
but just that with the dark roof and the dark trim, in the windows.
But we would definitely entertain any changes or recommendations. It's just with the different colors and the amount of work that was done on the building, it's hard to kind of blend it in, but we don't want to put a purple structure.
Mr. Chair. So a couple of clarifying questions. So is this structure in the exact same footprint as
Yes.
the one that's there, even the little sort of bump out?
Yeah, that is cantilevered. It's going to be a seated bench.
Yeah, so does that reflect the current footprint, or is that in addition to the?
That's in addition to on the north side.
It's 12 inches.
Yeah, I believe it's 12 inches
Yeah,
overhang.
give you a little more.
Right. But, so the current solarium, we'll just say, is on a foundation or footers. So that footprint is what you see.
Is still what you said.
Correct, yeah. So we're mirroring the footprint.
I appreciate that you guys are doing this effort. The solarium today, unfortunately, is past its useful life. There's something though that's charming about that sort of greenhouse solarium structure sitting up there, and I've often wondered, because I'm very familiar with this building, and that I'm like, that's one of the coolest, I think, attributes. It's something that I look forward to seeing as I'm driving down. Is that really unique feature? Kind of gets lost in this proposal. And I think maybe it's because of the steepness of the roof pitch potentially, and then maybe it's the amount of windows as well. I mean, if there was an opportunity to get larger windows or more glass on the west and north facades to help it still retain some of that solarium greenhouse-esqueness, I think that would be, from my perspective, that would still retain some of that charm that this one, while I think, handsome and fitting in with the context, I think it loses some of that uniqueness and some of that sort of.
More on the west and north.
Yeah, the
That's
west
the
and
little
north.
one.
Yeah, so as you're looking at it from, approaching it from the west on Detroit, where you see that, still figuring out, I guess in the top right image.
Yeah, so this is
That's
the
what you got.
left side, Chris, with the 4 windows.
Yep.
And the intent of less windows and more walls, shall we say, is because we're gonna be looking at the development next to us. So their proposed
Right.
is 5 stories, which will now tower over ours and obstruct our views. So on this side, where the slider is and these 2 windows, the 2 awning hopper, that is gonna be our neighbor looking into our house, shall we say.
Right.
So that was the intent of less windows on the east facing and the south facing.
Yeah, and I'm okay with east facing and south facing, but I'm saying on the north, I mean, the north has a lot of glass. More so than solids or more so than solid, but I think it would be nice if there was a way to have those two faces feel more like the solarium or more like a solarium versus sort of a more traditional doghouse, I guess. I think it's partially maybe the overhang, but I think it's also, you know, if this was just, if this had a flat roof on it, for instance, you could get higher, taller windows on that west facade. And I'm not saying that to do a flat roof, because having that opportunity for drainage is really
Yes.
ideal. But if it was a lower slope where you can get taller windows, and maybe instead of it, maybe looking at the color too to make it feel like it's a more cohesive form than some punched openings in a sort of a white or blank facade. That's all. I guess that's kind of where I mean, you can see in this image here, kind of again, the interesting simple glass box versus more of a traditional.
Well, and that's kind of our, you know, to make it usable space, you know, it is like a greenhouse up there, but not like a greenhouse.
Yeah.
If you've ever tried to grow something up there, you're watering it constantly, and if you dare to leave for an hour and come back, everything is brown, hunched over and dry.
I get that.
Well, and then all the windows, I mean, maybe we're just a little bit, I don't know what the word would be, but I want to do everything possible to alleviate moisture and water intrusion. Michelle and I work together. We're both real estate agents, so we, actually, Michelle sold me my first house on Clinton.
That's right.
24 years ago, small world.
Awesome.
But you know, to alleviate moisture, that's why we went through the double hung in the casement, west windows. And more on the west, which, you know, you're used to seeing that view. That's what we've been seeing. So, but again, we wouldn't entertain, you know, do anything, you know, to be able to continue this project.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, if there could be more glass, especially on that, on this facade that we're looking at, the west facade, to help retain some of that uniqueness of that existing feature.
That's one thing I was thinking of, was maybe as the roof goes up, making the three windows each a few inches taller than the others. You know, so it kind of steps up the window profiles. I know I talked to JP about that, but we were, you know, up against the deadline, and you always think of something.
What about like a spandrel panel instead of something that would reflect and look like the glass from below?
Yeah, or I mean, I don't know if, this is certainly a cost difference, but if you looked at doing storefront system on the west and north facade, so it's basically primarily glass. And then on the opposite side, where you don't see it, you're able to sort of have whatever there. Granted, you know, those wouldn't necessarily be operable unless there was an operable storefront. I'm just trying to think of like, how do you maintain sort of that unique feature, but still give you all of the other attributes that are necessary that you're looking for as well. I'm certainly not at all opposed to the project in general, but just thinking how to inject a little bit more of that uniqueness to at least these, you know, this sort of facade.
You can do running.
Right.
So they still be functional, get ventilation. It's a totally different.
Yeah.
It's, you know, aluminum frame
Right.
and insulated glass.
Well, and we looked at that, and that's what's failing right now. That's, you know, the issue of the wrapped casement, you know, it's just the durability. And especially, you know, when we get that westerly storm, it just needs.
Yeah.
Do you know when the solarium was
95.
put on? 95? Okay.
It started in 94. Was it
So
completed,
almost
do you
30
remember, Michelle, in 95?
I don't remember.
I
the
went
exact-
back and looked at it.
Yeah.
It started in 94. But it's 30 years old.
Yeah, it was about 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah. I mean, again, it was super cool. We were like, oh, how cool is this? Until you're living in it. You know, you walk up there, everybody's, wow, this is hot. Hot pots.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, do you feel like you've received
Yes, thank you very much.
all your advances?
Yes, very helpful.
Very much looking forward to seeing this advance.
Thank you.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
That completes our concept schematic plan review. Move on to administrative reports.
Yeah, just, we have the site visit to 1094 East 99 scheduled for next week, Wednesday, October 16th. So hopefully you guys can join us. It's one we've seen before, but they want to kind of want to come back. We tabled it for 6 months. Past 6 months, they wanted to come back, so we thought since so much time had passed, taking another look at it would be reasonable. We also have operational hearings with city council coming up in the next few weeks. Still not exactly sure when, but I'll keep you posted on that. As chair and vice chair, always welcome to join me at the table.
Okay.
And then Jessica attended a online conference seminar last week on climate heritage policy. So I asked her to just kind of give us share a little bit of what she learned, because it sounded like very interesting discussion. Yeah, just hearing how everyone else is doing things in the rest of the world.
Thank you. So yes, it was the U.S. Climate Heritage Policy in the International Context. It was a one-day kind of conference put on by the Advisory Council for Historic Preservation in conjunction with Georgetown University Law Center, Georgetown Climate Center, Cornell Law School, Cornell Center for Social Sciences, and the American Institute of Architects. So it was a very interesting group of people focusing on the kind of heritage part of historic preservation, impacts to indigenous cultures, as well as climate change, which is impacting everyone. And so it is kind of an interesting point in historic preservation as a field, because it was created mostly in the 70s with a focus on the built environment, and distinctly focused in the US at least on what you would consider a typical history with like an Anglo aspect of it. And so very defined thing with what's worth saving and documenting or preserving. And so the field's working to become more understanding of threats to our history, either man-made or natural. And it had a focus on the importance of putting preservation in the conversation with other fields. And so kind of incorporating yourself into a lot of conversations. There was a few different topics that they talked about with indigenous knowledge. The keynote speaker was representing the Greek Initiative at the UN, and as well as mitigation and adaptation, which are pretty important. The main kind of, it's hard to pare everything down, but it really just commented on the importance of the multidisciplinary work that's being done in the preservation field, and connecting with communities and marginalized groups to find out what's important to them, to get them to really invest in how they can preserve their culture, preserve their heritage. And fun quote is, there's no cultural heritage in a dead planet. And so you have to balance carbon zero carbon emissions, you have to balance preservation, adaptation, reconstruction, to make sure that everything fits together. And there's a lot of push and pull, where in some cases, maybe a full demolition isn't needed, but if you are demolishing something, make sure that you're salvaging every material to be reused elsewhere, like bricks or stone, and making sure that you're embracing not just the tangible history and heritage, but intangible as well. And so understanding how people define their own history, because some cultures, it's more of a natural field rather than the bricks and mortar that we may think of generally. And with climate change, it's obviously US, and in Cleveland, we don't deal with as much climate issues as other places, with hurricanes and tsunamis and flooding to that extent. And so we've had some pretty damaging storms. There's the 1909 tornadoes, 1953 tornadoes, 2023 surprise tornado that popped up. And so we still need to kind of keep in mind these climate events that are happening and take what other countries and organizations are doing and kind of paring it down to what fits in our very small geographic area comparatively. And yeah, so overall, it was very helpful in just figuring out ways to work with people to define what history and heritage means in our community and to people we share our community with. And kind of a reminder to get involved with the other departments and divisions. And when he was, make sure they know that we want to be involved in those conversations that maybe they think aren't really relevant to what we do, but pretty much everything is relevant to what we do in some way. So yeah, I thought it was very helpful. Kind of interesting seeing how the field is adapting as we're coming up on now. What at the time it was created, no one thought, the 70s would be historic in that way, and now they're historic. So yeah, overall, very helpful.
Is there a recording of that available online if anyone wants to?
I can double check.
If there's, we're happy to send it around. If anyone wants to
It was live streamed.
check out any portions.
I did not go to Georgetown.
Is this something they do on an annual basis or,
So this was the first one that they've done. The Advisory Council on Historic Preservation generally, usually is more well-known to work with Section 106 reviews and environmental based things like that. And so they are becoming more cognizant and aware of what their role is in the kind of overall landscape with Congress. So because they are the Advisory Council, they have more of a conversation advocacy-wise for preservation in the U.S. And one kind of thing is the U.S. doesn't have one specific person that can go to other countries and speak on U.S. policy. And that's something that should change because other countries can come to us and talk about what they're doing. We don't necessarily, because it's such a wide range that we have here. And they recently passed their policy statements, the first multi-agency policy statements on climate change and historic preservation and indigenous knowledge and historic preservation, which is kind of their way of kind of bringing themselves into that conversation. Yeah, right now we'll see, hopefully in the future.
any other reports? All right. With that, we'll adjourn our meeting and look forward to seeing you 28th. Okay.